From the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, greetings. It is PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Whoa, we're a day late and $1 short.
Yeah.
Actually, we're not $1 short.
No. Lord has provided quite well.
Provided really well.
A day late because we were getting the house pressure washed yesterday, get the mildew off the north side, and it would have been a little difficult to record with the high pressure stream of water pummeling the side of the house while we were trying to speak.
It was like being in Niagara Falls.
It was.
Somewhat
Step
like
by step, slowly we turned.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, that was an old vaudeville routine, but it probably
it was
best
used
known
by a bunch of people.
I know, probably best known to people our age from the Three Stooges.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Curly would say it, and of course, then Larry and Moe would turn on him, and yes. Anyway, well, welcome. So we're happy to be here, and a lot coming up today. We'll tell you more, give you update progress on Build Barn Better. Step 1 is done. The floor is down.
That's a beautiful floor. It's seriously, it's so solid beneath you. It's like, how can this possibly be, a coating over the old concrete?
It is an epoxy coating with a 15-year warranty. And it's funny because the barn, of course, has that big door where you could drive a truck into it and park in there. And maybe someday someone will use it for that. But they were wrapping up today, they were giving me the information on the warranty. Well, 15-year warranty against cracking, chipping, or delaminating, and clean up. Very simple little dishwashing soap, dish detergent in a bucket of water. If you spill oil out here when you're parking on, it's like, no, look, the heaviest thing on wheels will be my office chair.
So we're gonna have races. Office chair races.
Yeah, well, we could. So anyway, phase 1 is down, and we'll give you more updates on that as before the end of this program. But we are indebted to you, and we are grateful and thankful for you for making this possible.
Yeah, we really, really are. And thank you for not only your financial donations, but your prayers.
Amen.
We are
that is
undergirded by your prayers. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And also thank you for downloading the app.
Absolutely, because it is a place, it has become the most active app on my phone, my tablet, because now when you use the app, you can sign up for...
you can say yes to notifications
or no to notifications. So if you don't want to hear, the notifications come through, that's fine. But I like to see when people are using the messaging feature, and that's what the notifications are for. And
I have it set so I get notified, but there's no sound.
That's the way to do it. I think I need to change that on my, although I've got that on do not disturb mode, so it's not going to blink while we're doing this. But it does make a noise on my tablet. My phone, I get the little balloon that pops up, a little window.
Yeah.
But it is encouraging because we're seeing not just questions about the Bible, but we're seeing a lot of people in the prayer requests section asking for prayer and praying for each other. And that was that's one of the reasons we set that up. And
Absolutely.
we're really, really humbled and really overjoyed to see that, because that's what we are called as believers to do, to get together and pray for one another.
And I believe with all my heart, we're not to forget gathering together.
Yeah.
But not all of us have a building where we can go and gather with other people on Sunday or Wednesday or whatever. We just don't have that. Or if you do have it, you're not feeling like you're being fed.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we started Gilbert House Fellowship. And that's why we put this prayer request area and the conversation areas in our app.
Yeah.
So you can have that sensation of being able to talk to other people.
Right.
And be part of a body, the body of Christ.
To encourage and to uplift one another. And some of the prayer requests that have come in are very touching, because there are folks going through stuff.
Going through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, PID Radio, of course, it stands for Peering into Darkness. If you're brand new to this, we've been going for over 18 years.
2005, it began March of 2005. So we are just thankful that the Lord took that humble effort, which we thought at beginning was to market the novels we sold. It turned out the novels were to get us to start podcasting, which led us to the study and the networking, connecting with believers like Tom Horn, L.A. Marzulli, Michael Heiser, and so on. and really changed the course of our lives.
It truly has. And so we thank the Lord for that. We thank the Lord for all of you. And peering into darkness, the idea behind that is that Derek and I try to look at the world, at the news and other things that are going on that maybe you're not hearing reported on the news, and look at the spirit realm that are causing that effect in our material world.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of stuff going on. So we take a look at the news every day.
Yeah, we're diving in. And speaking of the news, just as a program note, if you are one who follows the daily 5 and 10 every weekday, the 5 and 10 news reports. A lot of people do. How could
they get by without the 5 and 10? You're the news source for a lot of people.
It is a small and humble effort, but we are taking this coming week off from doing 5 and 10. And I say we because Sharon really does a lot of the heavy lifting. She's up early in the morning before I am, trolling the news.
For about 3 hours.
Yeah. And if you've not subscribed, if you're on Twitter, subscribe to Sharon's Twitter feed because she gets a lot of that stuff early in the morning Central Time so that when I get up, I just troll her Twitter feed. It's like, okay, use that, use that. And that really saves me a lot of time in the preparation of the daily updates. But this coming week, because we're going to be away for a day and a half at Morningside as Aaron Lipkin is coming to town, his first appearance on the Jim Baker Show. And
finally,
so we will be there.
We've tried to get him on there for a while.
Yeah. So we're just thankful it worked out for his schedule as he's on a speaking tour and their schedule. So they're going to love Aaron and what he's doing.
I know. They're going to say, when can you come back? I know they will.
Right. And can you set up our tour of Israel?
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. So that'll be on Tuesday. And if you're in the Ozarks, by the way, it's free and open to the public. So July 25th, if you're listening to this, around 11 a.m. is when it starts. You can get more information at our website, gilberthouse.org. Or if you've got the app, go to the calendar section there. All the information is there, including a little map, which is cool.
And there's a cafe right there. So you can run in, get lunch, bring it to your table.
Yep. A little convenience store, too, if you just want a snack, get a bag of pretzels or something. Then Wednesday, we're working on a forthcoming documentary from Skywatch Films. We're going to sit down, talk about old Earth, young Earth, that debate. Then Thursday, we fly to Ohio for the Go Therefore conference that we'll tell you more about later. So anyway, thankfully, Joe Horn, when I called and texted him, Joe, got a really busy week coming up here and would have had Wednesday to do a couple days worth of updates. But now that I'm scheduled to do this film for Skywatch Films, I said he was very gracious about it. I said, yeah, absolutely, no worries.
So thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe, for that. So this coming week, no 5 in 10, but we'll be back a week from Monday with that. But
you can see the news on my Twitter feed.
That's right. And and if there is something big that breaks, we'll get on YouTube and we'll make that announcement.
Yep,
but the biggest thing, at least from where we sit, I mean, here in the U.S., we've got the ongoing drama with Trump, and they've set a trial for the one next May. It's like it is so obvious. I don't even realize
they're making him more and more popular. I just
he's pulling farther ahead of Ron DeSantis in the Republican polling. Interestingly, that Vivek Ramaswamy, who no one had heard of until like 6 months ago, is now polling a close third to Ron DeSantis.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
And Ramaswamy is actually saying a lot of good things. I actually like his positions on a lot of things.
Tim Scott, is that the name of the?
Tim Scott is the senator from South Carolina. I like him too.
Me too.
The other candidates, I mean, there's a lot to like. If you're from North Dakota, Doug Burgum, the governor there, is running, and he's done a great job as governor of North Dakota, as far as I can tell. And I'll be in North Dakota in October.
Oh, I know.
Looking forward to that because that's my mom's home state, so I look forward to going up there. But
that'll be fun.
But Burgum, he's got a lot of ground to cover and very little name recognition outside of North Dakota. So, but Trump, they're making him a martyr, and our politics here, it's like get some popcorn and enjoy the show. But just remember, as Christians, we're still called to make disciples of all nations, regardless of who's in the White House. I like that young man, Abraham Hamilton III, who's the fellow, hosts a daily 1-hour show for American Family Radio, and you could watch it stream live on YouTube. Very intelligent young man. I interviewed him a couple of years ago for my podcast, and I actually had him on 5 and 10 for Skywatch TV because he said something that just was brilliant, that a certain organization that was getting a lot of news attention for its protest in the streets was actually summoning spirits of the dead.
Yes.
Which is like, well, okay, that's what the Amorites were doing 4,000 years ago. Well, it's the same thing. Anyway, he's got a saying that I think is brilliant. what happens in your house is more important than who's in the White House.
Yes. Amen.
And that's something we need to remember.
Amen. And also remember that the world leaders are put there, allowed it to be there by the Lord.
That's right. He raises up kings and tears them down again.
He tears them down again.
So even if it looks like things were, shall we say, statistically improbable, it was allowed by God.
Yes. He has a plan. So just remember that.
Right.
Well,
Israel, what's going on with the judicial reform and with Benjamin Netanyahu and his health?
Yes. Well, a couple of things. Benjamin Netanyahu had what was described as being dehydrated a few days ago. He went in and they said while he was there, they took a look at his heart and it maybe was a bit irregular. So as of last night, we're recording this, of course, today on Sunday, the 23rd, 22nd? 23rd. So the 22nd, he had a pacemaker inserted. Right. So he's going to recoup for a few days before he does anything.
Well, no, actually, he's back in the Knesset.
Oh, is he? Because the big vote is going on.
Right. I'm looking at I-24 News as of 90 minutes ago.
Oh, because he was supposed to go to Cyprus and Turkey. I'm betting he decided not to go out of town because they were having this discussion and a vote. Right.
So as of today, which is now Sunday afternoon Israel time, he's released a video update on his condition. And he said, quote, I want to thank, and this was filmed at the Shiva Medical Center. I want to thank the many, many of you who asked about my health and thank the excellent team at Shiva that is accompanying me. As you can see, I'm doing great. We are continuing with our efforts to complete the legislation and the effort to do so with agreement. Either way, I want you to know that tomorrow morning, I'll join, that would be Monday morning Israel time, I'll join my friends at the Knesset. Meanwhile, thank you all very, very much to you all. And this was put out on his official Twitter feed at 8 o'clock this morning Central Time, which would be, 3 in the afternoon Israel time?
Yes.
Yeah, 7 hours difference.
2.
7 hours difference.
Oh, is it 7?
Yeah,
okay.
6 to England, 7 to Israel.
Yeah.
So he is looks better in the video than he did the other night when he was looking kind of pale. And,
well, if your heart's irregular, it can really, you don't feel well.
It would mess with you. But there is a vote taking place in the Knesset today on this judicial reform, and that is really the reason for all of the protests. And there are more protests taking place. Again, as of about an hour and a half ago, I-24 reporting that protests again in Israel have flared up. The Likud party has rejected a compromise proposal. This was put forward by a labor union proposing to modify the so-called Standard of Reasonableness bill. Now, this bill is expected to pass tomorrow, Monday, which is the key element in this judicial overhaul being implemented by the right-leaning coalition put together by Netanyahu and Likud.
Now, can you explain to those who just simply do not understand why Netanyahu would want to overhaul the judicial system?
Yeah.
It's not like our judicial system.
The government of Israel is not governed, they don't have a bound by a constitution. Right. They were preparing to write one back in 1948, and then they got invaded. Yeah. So they had to fight a war, and then they set that aside, and when the war was over, they just never got back to having a constitutional convention. However, the Supreme Court of Israel, about 9 or 10 years ago, a left-leaning justice whose name I forget, began drawing the court in a more activist direction. The court can rule on any law passed by the Knesset, which is Israel's Congress or Parliament, using a standard of reasonableness. In other words, if they decree that the law is not reasonable, they can strike it down.
Right. And you, as an outsider from another country,
yes,
can approach the court and ask for a review of an Israeli law. I have a business in Israel, even though I'm from New York.
Mm-hmm. And that's why there are so many protesters in Israel from outside the country. This was reported just the other day as people took to the streets, tens of thousands of people flooding the streets, flooding the airport. Mm-hmm. Many of them had flown into the country from the United States and other countries.
Yes. And what's really interesting, a couple of things that are really interesting about this protest march. They arrived in the Jerusalem entry into the gates on Tisha B'Av.
Mm. Now, Tisha B'Av, I need to look that up again. That's the day that was...
when just about everything went wrong. Tisha B'Av is when the temple was destroyed.
Yeah, the 9th of Av.
Twice.
Right. Began at sundown on this past Wednesday. And, commemorates the destruction of the temple.
Yes, twice.
Both times, yeah.
Twice. So that's when they arrived outside of Jerusalem. Then they went in the next day, probably at the conclusion of Tisha B'Av.
Mm-hmm.
But I read an opinion piece yesterday that seems to lay a lot of the blame for these protests at the feet of Ehud Barak, which really surprised me because I thought he wasn't even PM for very long and he's sort of disappeared.
Yeah. That is really intriguing. And the report, which was published in, so what was the website? It was jewishpress.com. That was where I saw the story that described Netanyahu during this address as looking very pale and nervous. And the author of the piece said he had never seen Netanyahu looking afraid, but here, and this isn't the author of this opinion piece at jewishpress.com says, I've never voted for Bibi. I've been critical of his, using this guy's words, I've been critical of his zigzagging and his chronic failure to keep promises. Then he goes on, I've never seen him anguished and afraid until Thursday night. In that key line, Bibi was not talking about the anarchists, nor about pilots who refused to show up for their reserve service. And by the way, there are more reservists now who claim that they're not going to show up if this reasonableness standard is struck down or modified. He was pointing to elements in the military, the colonels, who have taken over democratic countries, taking advantage of political crises in Turkey, Greece, and Chile under the guise of saving democracy. The military coup, and I'm quoting again from this article now, which I will link in the show notes so that you can see what I'm reading after the fact. The military coup is one mastermind devoting enormous amounts of money in the hundreds of millions to push hordes of dedicated Israelis who remind me of the zombie armies in a Hollywood movie and their incessant cries of Busha, Busha, their annoying Zamburas, and the fact that 99% of them wouldn't be able to explain what's a reasonability clause, never mind explain how it would destroy democracy as we know it. The mastermind is Ehud Barak, a narcissist who imagines Jewish bodies floating in the Yarkon River as the opening scene for his glorious return to power.
He actually talked about that. This is not an imaginary, phrase. Barak referenced that.
Mm-hmm.
He says, he told, according to this article, he told Herzog, who is the president of Israel, and he just recently visited our President Biden.
Mm-hmm. Addressed Congress.
Yes.
Yep.
The president of Israel is a diplomatic, a state position.
Mm-hmm. Figurehead.
It's sort of like being a sovereign.
Yeah, you don't really have any power. You represent the state.
Yes, it's soft diplomacy. So he was told, according to this article, Herzog was told what to say to Biden and to Congress by Ehud Barak. Barak is quoted as saying it's no longer possible to suppress the fact that as with an autoimmune disease, the perpetrators of this coup d'etat, he's referring to Netanyahu, are attacking the foundations of democracy and undermining the common good of the entire public. Only a blind, naive, or scornful person would not see Netanyahu's private interests, the abomination of a greedy sector, and the objectives of a dark, racist, messianic vision, which are hidden behind the coup. He's saying Netanyahu has messianic, aspirations.
Yeah.
This is such rhetoric that is contrary to the truth.
Yeah. Again, the reasonableness standard. You don't need to be a lawyer to see how that word reasonable. Is this law reasonable?
It's so wishy-washy.
It is a loophole you can drive a truck through.
And when you look at the members of their Supreme Court. It's an old boys network.
Yeah.
They essentially, appoint their buddies to come in.
Right. It would be as if here in the United States we had 9 justices who were all like Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yes. All of the same mind.
Right.
And when one left, they just brought in one of their friends.
Yeah. Voters in Israel tend to continue voting center or right, which is how Netanyahu has become the longest reigning prime minister in Israeli history, because his coalition, his party, represents a majority, more people in Israel. Now, the author of this op-ed piece at jewishpress.com quoted from an interview he did about 7 years ago with a member of Knesset from United Torah Judaism. He is ultra-Orthodox, or Haredim, and asked, the author of this piece asked Israel Itzhak Eichler if the Haredim are prepared to run the country someday, given their burgeoning demographics. In other words, they're the ones, like here in the United States, the Amish are the only ones who are having more babies, so that their population's growing.
Yeah.
The rest of us are not having enough children to replace us as we die. But in Israel, the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, are. And so this guy asks an intelligent, you look at the numbers, someday they're going to make up enough of a voting bloc that the Haredim could run the country. So
right now, Tel Aviv runs the country.
Right. But anyway, I think this is very telling that the Haredim are aware of the situation, or at least Eichler is. So the author of the piece asks Eichler, are the Haredim prepared to run the country someday, given their burgeoning demographics? Going back to that interview, I'm quoting now, I was stunned by the harsh accuracy of MK Eichler's reply, MK, member of Knesset. Quote, we're very afraid of taking control of the state. First, because as soon as we say we want to take over, make no mistake about it, the other side, the anti-religious, will forget all the rules of democracy and all the moral values, like that cat who was trained to serve as a waiter at a ball until it spotted a mouse. On the day the secular papacy, what a great phrase.
Yes,
the secular papacy understands that there exists such a danger, the entire IDF weaponry will be utilized to defeat the Jewish Hamas and the Jewish ISIS, end quote.
Oh, my goodness.
And the author of the piece responds to that, give that one 3 OMGs.
Yes.
So this again, he's quoting a member of the ultra-Orthodox community who said, look, if the secular papacy, if the non-religious in Israel, who are very anti-Haredim, anti-Orthodox, think that, and this is why Ehud Barak said what he said about Netanyahu having messianic aspirations, they're whipping up their protesters to think, Netanyahu thinks he's going to be a god. We need to do everything we can to stop it. And again, Eichler, member of Knesset, said they'll weaponize the IDF against such a thing because they think we're just as dangerous as ISIS or Hamas. And here in the U.S., we see that same thing where the liberals, the progressives here in the U.S. are more afraid of conservative Christians than they are of radical, and I say radical, it's not really radical Islam, violent Islam.
Yes.
Which, if you read
those who say that they believe the original commandments
of Muhammad, right,
called upon them to be violent.
Yes. They're more afraid of us than they are of them.
Yes.
And in Israel, the secularists are more afraid of the Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox Jews than they are of Hamas or ISIS.
The fact is that Christians very rarely do anything other than just complain. We will go to God with it, and that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to turn the other cheek. And I think that whether they understand that that's why we react the way they do, or they're taking advantage of why we react the way they do, I think that that's one reason we're easy targets, if you want to put it that way. Bear in mind that in Sweden, I think it is, that the burning of a Quran, a Torah, and a Christian Bible all took place. The Muslims complained. The Jews weren't happy. Christians barely noticed. They burned the Bible. We're used to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like this young man who, and I still shake my head at this, why Tucker Carlson interviewed Andrew Tate.
Oh, I do not understand that.
Yeah. But
he's reprehensible, Tate.
He is reprehensible, and he's declared that he is a Muslim because you don't mess with, Allah. I mean, Christians are wishy-washy. People will offend God all the time, Yahweh, but you don't mess with Allah. So, if you want to be a real man, if you want to be, tough, you got to follow a God who's going to say, smite your enemies.
And traffic women.
Yeah.
And do drugs.
Yeah.
And taking lots of money from, people who are...
Sadly, Andrew Tate has developed a following because he's one of the few voices who will publicly say to young men who have been disenfranchised by our culture that, no, being a man is not a bad thing. But the way Tate is going about it is horrific.
It is truly horrific.
That's not what being a real man is about.
No.
And he's not really read the Bible, because when Jesus comes back, he will be all out of bubble gum.
Yeah.
So if you think God is a wishy-washy, namby-pamby wimp, sorry, Andrew Tate, you don't know what you're talking about.
No, that is so true. Well, getting back to Israel.
Yeah, this is the other thing, because the author of the piece, should give his name because he deserves it. His name is David Israel. Okay, hard to forget.
Yeah, I've seen other things
David
from
Israel.
him. Yes.
Israel quotes Eichler, this member of Knesset, the ultra-Orthodox member of Knesset, reminiscing about a conversation he'd had with the late Justice Minister, Yosef Lapid. Quoting, "I complained once to a former justice minister about the activism of the courts, who were intervening in legislation without the authority to do it, disregarding the separation of powers." Again, this is the courts invoking that reasonableness standard. Oh, this law is not reasonable. That law is not reasonable.
Yeah.
Nothing you have done this session is reasonable.
Bottom line is we make the laws.
Yeah. So he told me, listen, forget this nonsense. When we realized that, and he names the former chairman of the Sephardi Haredi Shas party, okay, a political party of ultra-Orthodox Jews. When we realized that Aryeh Deri and Rav Ovadia brought in 17 Knesset seats in the 1999 election, and you, which was the UTJ party, which is the United Torah Judaism, so another ultra-Orthodox party, were getting stronger. We realized you were going to conquer our state. This is how the secularists view what's happening in Israel. And we had two options, either declare a military coup d'etat or a judicial coup d'etat. We didn't go for a military coup because we don't trust the army. Back then, Shahs received more votes in the army. Yeah, Shahs received more votes in the army than the entire left. So the military had not even co-opted. So we decided, he told me, and again, this is the ultra-Orthodox minister speaking, to shift the balance in all the government ministries to favor the judicial system, empowering the attorney general, the state prosecutor, the government legal advisors, the attorneys, because the legal system doesn't rely on the masses. In other words, they're unelected. And that's how we'll save our country. And they did it. What we're seeing today, they did it. And I say that as soon as they realize that they're losing control, it will be dangerous for religious people to live here. And
that is
again,
a coup d'etat.
It is a coup d'etat. And it's what the left wants to do here in the United States. They're not just doing it through the Supreme Court. George Soros is doing it here in the United States by funding the campaigns of attorneys, of district attorneys around the country, like Kim Fox in Chicago, like the young lady who was just forced out in St. Louis, the circuit attorney there, Kim, forgetting her last name. Anyway, Andrew Bailey, our attorney general here in Missouri, basically sued to get her pushed out because she was not actually enforcing the law. But you see it, George Gascon in Los Angeles, the guy who was recalled finally in San Francisco because the people in San Francisco were disgusted. I mean,
well, you would be if people can loot your store and not be prosecuted.
Right. And that's what George Soros is doing here in the United States, a judicial coup d'etat, because district attorneys here in the U.S. decide which cases to prosecute. And if you're not going to prosecute shoplifting, if you're not going to prosecute, say, car theft or even some violent crime. I mean, people are being now robbed in broad daylight in some of our larger cities here. Then you've accomplished what you're trying to accomplish, which is the fundamental destruction of American society without having to win a majority in Congress, in Senate or win the Supreme Court.
And if you do get arrested, no bail.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. The state of Illinois, the Supreme Court in Illinois upheld the cashless bail law.
That just... what's the point then?
Yeah, the point is nobody is held.
You have no reason not to run.
Mm-hmm.
You won't show up for your court date because you don't have any investment in, like, I want my money back. You're holding my money.
Right. No, it is astonishing. So there is a similar thing happening in the U.S. It's just not as far along. But in Israel, the government of Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to turn this back. They recognize what's happened, that the legal system, the judicial branch of government, if you will, which is not constrained by a constitution, has taken over the government. The Knesset is essentially powerless, beholden to the whim of an unelected judicial branch. And that is why you've got all these people protesting on the streets.
I'm going to say something about what's going on in England, and then we're going to go back to Israel after the break, I think. But in England right now, climate change activists are doing the same thing.
Just
they are
stop
behaving
oil.
in chaotic ways that stop the engine of government.
Yeah, Extinction Rebellion.
Yes,
Yep.
so many of them. But we're starting to see, if you really watch the news, there is a pushback. A lot of angry, everyday citizens that are starting to think, hold on, climate change seems like a religion. In fact, Michael Gove just said that they need to back down on the net zero target because climate change is more of a religion.
It absolutely is.
It absolutely is.
The data doesn't support it, but, well, facts don't matter. It's what we know to be true.
Sounds like the science, doesn't it?
The science.
The science. Well, we will get back to Israel in a minute, but first we're going to take a break.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah. Ehud Barak. Another Barak.
I know.
Controlling the shots. PID Radio continues ahead. Space is not the final frontier, but there are those who want you to think it is. 75 years ago, something crashed in the desert near Roswell, New Mexico. An industry has grown up to sell the idea that the pilots were extraterrestrials. We want you to know the truth. For a limited time, we're making available a special offer featuring the groundbreaking book, The Day the Earth Stands Still. This book shows step by step how the occult teachings of Madame Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley grew into the ancient aliens hypothesis of the modern UFO movement. It's our Gilbert House Roswell special. For just $35, we'll send you The Day the Earth Stands Still, plus our DVD sets, The Best of Sci Friday Volumes 1 and 2. It's a $65 value for just $35. Take advantage of the Gilbert House Roswell special for a limited time only, and you'll only find it at our store, online at gilberthouse.org. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. You know, pretty soon we're going to be able to say, coming to you from the barn.
That is true.
I know. I love it.
And again, we thank you for your support. If you are so led, want to make a contribution to Build Barn Better.
Yes.
Our small little contribution pushing back against the insanity of a crazy world from our little spot of heaven here in the Ozarks.
It truly does. And many of you have helped out. So thank you for that. It helps not only to build the barn, but also whatever the Lord has in mind beyond that. We just want to be able to, to fulfill whatever his mandate is.
Yes.
When the shepherd says do something, you do it.
So you'll find a link, a red donate button, or you can go to pidradio.com/donate or gilberthouse.org/donate. Goes to the same place. And we thank you for that. Just 18 months away and we'll be 20 years at this.
I know. That's a long time. I'm starting to feel really old. Israel. We promised to get back to Israel just about a week ago. We were telling you, and I think you mentioned it on your 5 and 10 as well, the red heifers in Israel. You were discussing before the break the fact that there are those in Israel who fear that the ultra-Orthodox religious segment
Mm-hmm.
of society might actually begin controlling society. As I've said earlier, right now, Tel Aviv, the tail wags the dog.
Yeah.
Tel Aviv is extremely liberal, extremely liberal. And their rule, because remember, the capital, essentially everything was done from Tel Aviv until just recently. And everything, even though the Knesset's been in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv has been considered the capital of Israel. Not any longer. It's now Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
Many embassies have been moved there. Tel Aviv is not happy about that. They're not happy that Jerusalem is starting to become more and more important. I think those liberal secularists
Mm-hmm.
in Tel Aviv, including Ehud Barak, are starting to see a move towards a more traditional state. And one of those traditions is very, very old, and it's those red heifers.
Yeah, we talked about that on last week's PID radio.
I know.
So,
well, they're there. They are there. And there is a claim that if you go to Shiloh with us, we might even be able to see one of them.
Right. We did a little looking at this, by the way. They will have to be at least 3 years old, which means next fall, next Christmas, that time frame. But if they've got them there at Shiloh,
Spring of 2025.
winter of 2024, spring of 2025, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we go to Israel next spring, 2024, with Tim Alberino, we may well see them if they are available for us to view.
Yes.
At Shiloh, because that's where they're taking them. I'm a little surprised that they're putting them anywhere where the public might have access to them, because
I know they won't let us touch them, I'm sure, because there are very strict rules.
Cannot have any kind of a blemish. But I mean, one person throwing a rock could render it, so
absolutely.
we pray that doesn't happen. Now, we will say this very clearly: we do not need a third temple. As Christians, we do not need a third temple for the return of Christ.
No, but I think that if you look at Bible prophecy, it seems to imply that the preparations for Messiah, the Jewish belief for Messiah, which is a two-stage Messiah, possibly two individuals.
Yeah, that's who they believe is coming.
Yes.
Messiah ben Joseph and then Messiah ben David.
So we're looking for that to start. I think we're starting to see the beginnings of that coming to fruition.
Right.
And it means that the return of Jesus, the real Messiah, is very close, because he's going to come and stop that fake one.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why the red heifers really are important, I think. Again, we don't need them, but it's what has been prophesied, that we're going to see the sacrifices stopped in the middle of a 7-year covenant, which means that somewhere along the line they began. Yes.
And that covenant, I know it's often interpreted as a covenant with Israel, but it doesn't say that in Daniel. It says a covenant with many.
Yes. Yes. So it's hard to say exactly what that means.
Who's the covenant with? It doesn't say that it's with Israel.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Well, in the idea of how we're being reshaped, one of the things that we see in Bible prophecy is the idea that if you are not marked in the body of the beast, which is the body of the Antichrist has a body too, rather than belonging to the body of the true Christ, you won't get to buy or sell. Well, we're seeing that now, where people in England are being debanked.
Yeah, this is a really strange story, but you can see how this fits into a prophetic paradigm. Nigel Farage, who is the one who really got Brexit put on the ballot.
He really did.
Boris Johnson kind of shepherded it through, but it really was Nigel Farage who, and the UKIP party, United Kingdom Independence Party, really brought that issue home and got a majority of Brits to vote for it. Scots not happy with it, I suppose. The Welsh not necessarily happy with it either, but a vast majority of the English voted in favor of it, and that carried the UK.
Yes.
But Farage was notified, I guess, last November, and he finally went public with it just a few weeks ago.
He wasn't notified in November.
Oh, that's right.
He was only recently notified.
The memo
of the meeting took place in November. Right. And he managed to get all of that information, 40 pages of notes from a meeting that took place on November 11th of last year. And in that meeting, it was made clear that it was his opinions that caused him to be debanked.
Coutts, which is spelled Coutts, which is
it's a really old bank for the Royals.
Several centuries old.
Yep.
And it's a division of NatWest, which is a big banking conglomerate.
Which is also a division of Royal Bank of Scotland, RBS.
Oh, okay.
I think it is.
Yeah, and they got bailed out during the banking crisis back in 2008.
To the tune of 39%. The people of England own 39% of that, and yet
they debanked Farage because they didn't like his politics. And the thing is, it's like, okay, one bank says, look, we don't want your business anymore. Fine, I'll take it elsewhere. He went to 9 other banks, and they all turned him down.
Yes.
So it sounds to me as though there's some collusion there. Now, that part of the story has not come out. We don't know if that's true, but boy, it sure seems suspicious.
It really does. And if you're interested in this, you can follow Nigel Farage, Farage, on Twitter. But you can also see his program. Derek and I are totally hooked on GB News, Great Britain News. So GB News is an app that you can add to your your mobile device, your smart TV.
It's available for Amazon Prime or Roku.
And you can still watch it here in the United States. It's not blacked out because we're not in England. No, you can watch it. And they even have Calvin and his common sense. He is a former Church of England.
Right.
He left the Church of England. In fact, I think he was sort of booted out because he actually wanted them to preach the gospel.
Yeah. So now he's with the Free Church of England. Reverend Calvin Robinson, an African, black man.
Black man who is wonderful, and he has guests on to talk about all sides, but he is very clear that he believes in Jesus Christ as your Savior. It's Jesus alone, and he preaches sometimes, and some of his guests preach, and at the end of every program, he has a young person read a prayer. They pray.
Yeah. And GB News is allowing this. And yet, the fact that, he's a black Christian, you still get the critics of GB News who are as irrational as the left here in the United States.
Exactly.
It's a racist channel. They're promoting racism.
They have we're not saying it's a Christian channel at all. We're not saying that.
But
it's what Fox News should be.
It's what Fox News should be. Exactly right. So his program's on every Saturday afternoon. Farage is on Monday through Thursday evenings. Their time, it's early afternoon, our time.
1, I think.
Yeah.
Our time.
Yeah, 7
Central
p.m.
time.
7 p.m. UK and 1 p.m. here.
Yep.
But the fact that he got debanked and he went public with this prompted other people to come forward who didn't have the same platform that Farage had. It's really interesting that he was notified just after he won an award called the TRICS Award, TRICS, and I don't even know what that
I think it's just
for.
TRIC. I don't.
Or the TRIC Awards, yeah. Anyway, it's a public voted for the best news presenter in the UK, and Farage won it. He has kind of stepped back from politics and is now doing an evening 1-hour show. And it's very entertaining and very informative. And he will get people on who don't agree with him. But once he won this award, it's suddenly like a few days later, it's like, oh, okay, I've been debanked. And 9 other banks won't let me deposit my money with them either. And now thousands and thousands of people across the UK are coming forward and saying, yes, the same thing happened to me.
Tens of thousands are in a Facebook group talking about their debanking. Yes, Nigel has discovered that. His debanking happened after he paid off his mortgage.
Oh, they wait until after he paid off his home.
Even in the meetings, in the minutes, they said, once he's paid off his mortgage, we will essentially debank him.
That is... and it may sound like an inconvenience at best, but try to get by in this world without being able to have without a bank account.
Because cash is dying.
Right.
It is being replaced with an app on your phone or a card in your wallet.
Right.
But eventually it will be a chip in your hand.
They've been selling us on the convenience of it for years.
Mm-hmm.
What's in your wallet? You remember the TV commercials with the person fumbling through his wallet for change at the coffee shop and everyone behind him looking exasperated and frustrated, like, oh, will you get on with that already? Yeah, okay. Swiping a card, that is so much easier. Forgetting that when you do that, you leave a record of where you were, when you were, what you bought.
Yes.
Now, the next step is to say, well, we need to get rid of cash because, and they even tried this a little bit during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's dirty. Well, if you are kicked out and you cannot use cash, what will you do?
Yeah, if you've been debanked so you don't have a debit card and you don't have cash, physical cash, you
might say, well, I've got a credit card.
But those are tied to banks. So if you're debanked, how do you make use of that?
You become a non-person.
Right.
You no longer exist in the world.
Mm-hmm. We're moving closer to that. The Federal Reserve this week is launching its FedNow.
Oh.
The FedNow service. This is an instant payment system for organizations. The Fed is saying, oh, no, this is not a central bank digital currency. This is not a CBDC. It's intended to change how banks settle transactions between banks.
Right. It replaces the old, SWIFT.
Yeah,
system.
It's called a real-time gross settlement, which, in the past, banks settling accounts with one another could take a couple of 3 days. And, this goes back to the old days where you actually physically had to haul pallets of cash around. And, today's environment, that can be really dangerous, especially in big cities. You got to have, guys who are pretty heavily armed. Anyway, the central bank, Federal Reserve Bank, which I remind you, even though it's named Federal Reserve Bank, is privately owned. It has brought on board a mix of 41 financial institutions, 15 service providers, and the U.S. Department of the Treasury. And it is supposed to roll out this within the next week or so. It, although it is not a central bank digital currency, it is a change in the way our fiat currency system reconciles transactions between institutions. That's exactly right. I'm taking the long way around to explain it. It's laying the groundwork for a central bank digital currency. It is the network, the high-speed highway to enable this type of swift, real-time reconciliation.
And the New World Order will need, or the coming government, the world government, will need this sort of financial system in order to function and in order to make sure that only those who are in the club can participate. Right now in China, we see a sample of this. I think it's WeChat. They pay for their meals, they pay for their Ubers, they pay for everything through an app. But the app also sort of follows everything that they say online. It may even listen to them in real time in analog space. In other words, your behavior will determine your ability to use the financial system.
Social credit score. Yeah. The FedNow service is intended to replace the current system, ACH, Automated Clearinghouse.
That's right. It wasn't SWIFT, it was ACH.
ACH, which...
And FedNow is all one word, by the way.
Yeah. So debit card processing, ACH, when you deposit a check, takes a few days to clear. The FedNow service is intended to make that instantaneous. But, of course, it means all transactions then go through the Federal Reserve Bank. And even though it's only quasi-governmental, it means the government essentially has access to it and could potentially then someday control it. That's the thing with a central bank digital currency. The big difference between a CBDC and a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is reconciled by an unaffiliated network of computers out there that are working on crunching those numbers to verify transactions. It's decentralized. It is outside the control of government. And that's why governments are trying to institute and develop CBDCs, because they don't like, Ethereum or Bitcoin or any of these other cryptocurrencies out there, Dogecoin, whatever, outside of their control. And we're going to start seeing complaints about them, the same complaints that are levied against people who use cash. Oh, the only people who use things like that are terrorists and tax cheats.
Well, that's one of the complaints in that meeting against Nigel Farage.
Mm-hmm.
They talked about his being a politically exposed person, and therefore he was vulnerable to blackmail
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps even participating in things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, there's no evidence at all.
None at all.
That
It was
he
all
is,
conjecture.
we just don't like the fact that he got us out of the European Union. And besides, his politics are way too conservative for our tastes.
And the people like him too much, so let's get rid of him now.
And it gets back to what's going on in Israel, where, you know, the conservatives there are trying to say, look, we want our country back. We want the elected representatives of the people in the Knesset to make law, not these unelected liberals controlling the judicial system and the legal system.
Exactly.
And liberals are saying, oh, no, we're not going to have a bunch of religious conservatives running the country, even if that's what the people want. The difference between now and 20 years ago, as in that article where the ultra-conservative, the ultra-Orthodox member of Knesset said, yeah, the judicial minister said we had a choice, either use the military or use the legal system to take over the country. And we didn't trust the army because there were a lot of religious conservatives in the army.
Mm-hmm.
So we went and took it over through the judiciary. Now, apparently, Ehud Barak thinks they've got the military. And he's been kind of working behind the scenes, according to this article, for the last 6 years or so.
Providing funding, but where is he getting the funding?
Well, probably the same place that the liberal district attorneys here in the U.S. are getting their funding.
There is an organization, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of it right now. I looked it up several months ago, that is funding a number of chaotic protest groups like Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion, and there are a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
And their activities are glue themselves to a road, or just have a slow walk in the middle of the M25,
mm-hmm.
which is a busy road that rings London, and stop people from getting to their jobs, getting to an appointment, getting to the doctor,
mm-hmm.
getting to an emergency room. You might have someone having a baby or dying.
Mm-hmm.
No.
They don't care.
They
because
train.
In their minds, they're saving the planet. Their religion is they are literally saving the planet from overheating because we're burning fossil fuels.
But here's the irony. There was a woman who was involved just recently. She interrupted a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And after she was done, she got on a big plane and went on vacation.
Right. Went on holiday.
The world.
Same as it ever was. Well, we will pray that, first of all, for the health of Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Prime Minister, exactly.
And that things go the way the Lord will allow there. But it does look like this bill is going to pass, and we'll see liberals' heads exploding all over Israel. But again, the idea, just imagine here in the United States, Americans, if it came out that not only could the Supreme Court overrule any law passed by Congress, which it kind of almost does anyway, but that those cases could be brought by people with no standing as Americans or as U.S. citizens.
Yes.
Just somebody from outside, George Soros, just from outside the country, just saying, well, I don't like that law, so I'm going to challenge it because I occasionally do business in the U.S. And the Supreme Court, without a lower court seeing or hearing it first, would just take up the case and say, yeah, we strike down that law because it's not reasonable. That's what's going on in Israel. It is crazy.
One more thing before we go, just like Steve Jobs.
Just a song before we go.
There is a page that I found at our U.S. Department of State.
Yes.
Yes, I was going through my little
at the website.
List.
I'm assuming this is not somebody who runs errands at the U.S.
State.gov.
Okay.
Global Equality Fund.
Global Equality Fund.
The Global Equality Fund provides emergency assistance to human rights defenders and human rights programming support to grassroots LGBTQI+ organizations to catalyze positive change, and draws its strength from the support and partnership of an international coalition of like-minded governments, businesses, and foundations.
LGBTQI
Yes.
plus.
Yes. Intersectional.
Oh, okay. Inquisitive?
No, it's intersectional.
Okay.
Yes. If you look at many of the state,
Yeah.
like they'll say we're even our military, we're intersectional.
Okay. So they're basically taking our tax money
Yes.
and sending this to...
Well, in partnership with International Coalition of Like-Minded Governments, businesses, and foundations. This is our Department of State.
Yeah. And they name the partners: Argentina, Australia, Canada, Chile, Croatia, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Iceland, Italy, Montenegro, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Uruguay. Then we get the private companies: the Arcus Foundation, the John D. Evans Foundation, FRI, the Norwegian Organization for Sexual and Gender Diversity, the MAC AIDS Fund. I don't know what MAC stands for. Deloitte, LLP, Royal Bank of Canada, Hilton, Bloomberg LP,
Marriott
International, Thomson Reuters Foundation, the Human Rights Campaign, and Out Leadership.
Why is our State Department funding this?
Good question.
Yeah, well, it's just one of those things that lots of things that are out there. And on the other side, there is, just in case you're not aware of this, an organization calling itself Project 2025. It reminds me a little bit of the Project for a New American Century. It is an advisory group that is helping to transition into, they're assuming, a conservative presidency for 2025 after the 2024 election. This is the goal of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project. Build on 4 pillars that will collectively pave the way for an effective conservative administration. So don't think for a minute that there are organizations that are simply sort of orchestrating our future from a liberal, progressive, socialist point of view. Same thing on the right. It's 2 heads on the same body.
Yeah.
2 hands on the same body.
And the 2 guys leading this are from the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that I dislike the Heritage Foundation. It's just bear in mind that there are individuals working on both ends of the spectrum to essentially construct the future.
Why do the nations rage and imagine a vain thing?
That is the way to leave this, because no matter what happens in Israel, no matter what happens in England, in the United States, in Canada, anywhere in the world, the Lord is still controlling all of it. He's still allowing the fallen realm and those human beings in league with them to hatch out their little plans and think that they're going to beat him when in fact he's already won.
Yeah. He who sits in the heavens laughs. He holds them, the Lord holds them in derision.
Psalm 2, exactly. So bear that in mind when you start to get upset about these things, because Derek and I look at the news every day. You have to report on it. I spend 3 hours trolling the news and I walk away. I don't think about it after that.
Go feed the birds and
I do other things.
Enjoy the flowers
Write
outside.
Red Wing books.
And I throw, foam bricks at the TV because I don't want to damage the TV, but just want them to know we're paying attention.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So it will go the way the Lord allows. And as I read the Bible and prophecy, I think things will get more difficult before they get better.
They will, and they're already getting difficult. I mean, there are parts of the world, in Nigeria, for instance, Christians there are being killed every Sunday.
Yeah.
Some of the Fulani will go into a church on Sunday and they will just shoot everybody in there, or they'll take some of them. They'll kidnap the kids. In India, there's one of the provinces of India right now has a relatively large Christian population. The Hindus decided to take 2 women who were Christians and strip them and assault them.
Yeah.
That happened months ago, but a video finally came out, and so Modi, who is a Hindu, had to act because the Christians need protection too. Right. You cannot do that, but it's a hint of where things are going. The tribe against tribe, religion against religion.
That is where we are headed. Jesus warned us that this was coming.
But this is a short season.
Yeah.
It is a short season we're going through. It may seem long as, the days, the pressure seems so tough, but it's a short season.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is coming back. And once that happens, eternity, and you'll look back on this and feel like it was a blink.
Yeah.
Because he's going to wipe every tear away.
So pray for the wisdom and discernment to and the strength to continue sharing the hope that we have in Jesus Christ while we still have
that is
time.
it. Yeah. That is it. Just like Calvin Robinson was telling the Church of England, your job is not to direct us politically. It is to, preach the gospel of Jesus Christ.
and him crucified.
Exactly.
That's right.
Well, that's our job too.
Amen to that. Well done. Well, calendar-wise, we've got a few things coming up. If you're in the Ozarks on Tuesday, we'll be at Morningside. That is Jim Baker's place, recording the Jim Baker Show with our good friend Aaron Lipkin. He'll be there with us. That will be Tuesday, July 25th, beginning at around 11. It's open to the public and free. Mm-hmm. So if you're in the area and you've got time, come by, say hello, have some lunch there at the wonderful Fireside Cafe.
Oh, they have great burgers.
They do. This weekend, we will be in Ohio for the Go Therefore Conference. That'll be Friday and Saturday, July 28th and 29th. Both of us are speaking on Saturday. As I said during this week's Bible study, I realized I've got 40 minutes to speak and I've got 45 slides in my presentation. So unless I'm going through them at really, okay, here's this, and that, okay, here, just take pictures. Watch this later.
Bottom line is take some Dramamine before his begins.
Whoa! Because
those slides may be going past pretty quickly.
I'm going to cut out a bunch of slides. So but it's a wonderful gathering, and the lineup, if you're in the area and you still have time to sign up, please take advantage of it. L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Pastor Casper McLeod, Coach Dave, David Hefner, Dr. Greg Reed, Tom Dunn, Vicki Joy Anderson. We love Vicki. Her dad, Jeff, will be there as well.
Oh, I know. Kenny C.
Kenny C., David Paxton, Randy Conway, Nathan Branham. That's the whole lineup there. If you can't...
Plus Mike Spalding.
Mike Spalding, who's hosting, so he's not going to be speaking, but
you get to meet him, and I'll tell you what, Mike Spalding is amazing. And he and Kathy pray for everybody.
They
every
do.
Day.
Yeah. He is a scholar and also a prayer warrior. So that'll be Friday and Saturday. If you can't get there, this will be streamed on the web. And this is such a gathering. I mean, come on, L.A. Marzulli. He's worth the price of admission alone. So this is well worth adding to your calendar, whether you attend in person or get the streaming video. Just $59. And you can find out more at GoThereforeConference.com. GoThereforeConference.com. We've got other things coming up later in there, but you find all of those on the calendar at gilberthouse.org or in the app. Again, please download the app, gilberthouse.org/app, pidradio.com/app. And until next time.
No, hold on. Just want to remind you, no 5 and 10 this coming week.
Oh, right.
And there will be no PID Radio or Gilbert House Fellowship next weekend.
Yeah, we'll be traveling back from Ohio next weekend, so we will see you again the following Sunday. So until then,
yes,
I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is an outreach of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, PIDradio.com, Twitter @PID Radio, or by downloading our free app, PIDradio.com/app or gilberthouse.org/app. Join us each week for our Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship.